It's several 24-hour videos for you, Chemo.
Yeah, all of those are 2-minute time
Time
lapses
lapses.
of
Yes, but
edited
they all
clips.
show the clouds. They all show the clouds and a continuous stream of information coming in. So you don't
Simply
need the
not
other frames to
satisfactory,
know that it's
Mike.
24 hours.
It's
Unless
not.
you think that the sun disappears every couple of seconds and just blinks out, and you're going to include that in your
Look, I'm with you. I'm ready to
argument.
end the flat Earth overnight, just like yourself. But
There you go. You got it.
unless we get that 24-hour continuous, uncut, unedited, no one, no flat
It's
earther is going to
continuous,
buy.
unedited.
Remember, you
It's
got
continuous and unedited. It's a time
to.
lapse.
That's not going to shut the flat Earth down. 2 minutes of 24 hours. We're
Why
looking
not?
to embarrass
Why
the
not?
flat. You guys want to put
Everything
egg in
needed
the
there to
face,
tell
right?
that
So you have been,
everything to, everything needed to
crucified.
tell that that camera made a chemo. Everything that's needed to tell that that camera was on for 24 hours and was a continuous shot, even though it was taken at a slow interval, is there. The cloud movements, the continuing information stream is unmodified through the whole damn thing. If you'd like to explain how the sun stayed up there, go for it.
I mean, I don't have any explanations. The problem is I don't have that much faith in the fact that a 2-minute video will explain 24 hours. You know?
A 2 minute video can show you a
Is
tree grow in your backyard.
I mean, yeah, but when it comes to 24 hours on the globe, down south there, it's a big deal. We need the full shebang, the full works, full
Well,
transparency.
you got enough to actually raise a question in your mind that flat Earth is real. I guess if you want to do further testing, you can.
No, it's not my claim. Your
But
claim is that there
you
were
should already
24
you
hours.
should already be. No,
so
hold on.
unless
That's 24
you know,
hours.
unless you can demonstrate that for some reason that video is actually unreliable, it sounds like you need to concede.
I mean, like I said, that can't be used.
Saying how to high enough frame rates simply not acceptable or good enough.
You're not listening, are you? We want to shut down the flat Earth, right?
I listen very carefully.
We want young people to understand that space is a real place and it's possible for them to go
Kind of
there.
hard with videos of 24-hour sun floating
Now
around
remember,
like that.
we are extremely influential when it comes to the next generation. Okay?
Yeah,
Our
you're,
arguments are,
36
you're
hours.
really, really good at getting them to laugh. I agree.
well, there are hordes of young people, 33%, I think, in America, now doubt the globe, doubt the globe
Mason number right
pictures.
there.
We've also got millions there in South America. We've got millions here in Britain here. So, I mean, the
You
numbers
got like
are
7
huge.
in fucking South America, but
Let's
but
not,
anyway,
let's
so
not get
chemo.
into that. But the point is,
So,
we've done that, okay? Not I, but the community has done that. As a collective, we've influenced the entire every nation in the world, every country has heard of Flat Earth as a result
so,
of what we do.
so chemo,
Yeah,
let me ask you
so,
something.
You're
When we
international
ask you
laughing.
for a 24-hour observation, it has
He,
to be.
he gave it to you. He gave it to you. It was condensed into 2 minutes, but it's 24 hours. You can see the sun. It doesn't blink in and out. But chemo, let me ask you a question because you say you want to know space is real. Are you denying that there is this area between two objects?
Look, stop playing silly games, right? Remember,
Are you denying that there is area between two objects?
right. We're talking about the vacuum.
Are
of space.
you?
Exactly.
I'm asking,
Scott.
are you
Exactly.
denying that there is area
Behave.
between two objects, chemo?
Behave. We're talking about.
I am behaving. Are you for the fourth time, are you denying that there is area between two objects?
Area. What's in that area?
More or less molecules per unit of area.
Molecules? What kind of molecules?
So are you denying that there is area between us and the moon, us and Saturn, us and Jupiter?
Look,
are
you're
you
gonna be
denying
silly, Pure.
that
You're gonna
place...
get silly answers, right? You need to be serious in this moment.
I'm being very fucking serious.
No, I'm not talking about that area. I'm talking about the vacuum of space. Right.
Congratulations if you're admitting that there's area between us and those objects. Congratulations, you admitted there's space.
No, I'm talking about
Yes.
atmosphere being next to a vacuum. That's the narrative.
You're a fucking idiot for trying to describe it that way. But congratulations for admitting that there is area, which is space, between us and objects.
Can't have this gas next to an area of no gas pure without the gas rushing in to fill that space that's available, right?
No, unless there's a force acting upon it. And congratulations, we have a force acting upon it. But there's space.
See, now we had two physicists today that told us gravity is not a force. Now, where'd you go?
You're full of shit. You're full of shit.
Why?
Because no physicists have said that ever.
What?
Which one? Which physicist said there's no force acting upon us?
See, this is why you guys just can't handle.
Which physicist said that, Chemo?
I blow my own trumpet.
Physicist
we're so
said that? You said you had two physicists admit that there is no fucking force.
Now think about it.
Who?
If you're saying all this, can you imagine what I'm thinking now?
Who, Chemo? Who, bitch?
I mean, those that were here today already heard the experts say, yes, it's not a force. The Pure's here.
Who, bitch?
You see, acting like this. And
yep. When I've asked you 3 times and you're avoiding bringing up any name, you're just saying the physicist. Who?
Yes. Veach is here. Veach is here. I'm waiting all day. I was going to write the text. Can't wait till Veach is here. But I thought if he sees it, he won't come. But he's here now.
Which physicist that was here today said that? Exactly.
Do you believe that you have to talk about forces? Do you believe that to talk about movement, you need to talk about forces?
Can't handle that. The fact that we've
lied, Chemo. Busted. Exactly.
Beach. Anyway, today, 2 physicists, 2 scientists. I couldn't believe you weren't here. You probably were listening. Probably weren't. You probably was. Who knows? But whatever. The idea is that I was like, hey, physicists.
The lie is that Chemo says 2 physicists said that there was no force.
I was like, hey,
acting upon the Earth.
Beach is saying that gravity is a force. What's going on, physicists? They were like, yeah, no, gravity's not a force. Yeah, we know that.
Yeah, no, gravity's not a force. Yeah, lying, Chemo, because I asked you who, and you fucking avoid that like the plague.
Yes, no way. Wait till Veach, you know, like, this is like great, because I was like, why is Veach saying that it's a force?
Chemo, I have been here when the discussion is happening.
You're saying, you 2 physicists are saying it's not a force. And this guy,
you were here.
This guy, Veach,
did anybody say that?
It is a force. What's going on?
Or is Chemo lying through his fucking teeth again?
By saying, well, he probably meant this. He probably meant that. He probably meant this. Blah blah blah.
Dr. Phil said, yes, it's not a force, but the resultant of the gravity, it's a force, the weight.
Yeah, that's the
what
did they say?
Yes, that's the words of Dr. Phil.
Don't lie now. What did they say?
I'm not lying. They have been talking about the weight. You didn't take it.
What did they say?
As a consideration, you have been taking it because gravity is not a force, but the weight is a force. The resultant is a force. So that was his argument, and the other arguments that have been put on the table.
People say, yeah, okay, so it's not a force now.
Both of them. Yes. The resultant of gravity is a weight. So weight, it's a force, my friend.
You don't even have to talk about forces to talk about movement, though.
So it looks like Veach is the only person left now saying it's
even
a
if
force.
you want to call it a force or no, that doesn't actually change what we see happening, which is acceleration. And whatever you want to talk about, what kind of paradigm you want to talk about that in, just you can talk about it in physics. You can talk about it in Lagrangian mechanics, which is energy levels. Like, you don't need to talk about it as a force if you don't want to, but that doesn't make it less valid to use it as a force in Newtonian mechanics.
That's right. That's correct.
Is gravity a force, V?
Weight is a force.
It is.
Finally, we've got him to concede. After days, 564,000.
He didn't concede. You interrupted literally 2 words into a sentence.
Finally.
Sorry.
It's the same thing I've always said, Kim. I don't know what you're talking about.
See, that's why we're here, Veach.
Mass accelerating is a force. Force is mass accelerating.
Veach, we're here to
I don't know what you're talking about, dude. So that makes gravity, which causes mass to accelerate the force.
Welcome to Einsteinian gravity.
What
are you talking about?
Kimo, what is distorting in Einsteinian vision, or equation? What is distorting the dimensions?
Look, can we just welcome Veach?
No, Kimo. What is distorting the dimensions in Einsteinian equations?
I've worked very hard to get Veach.
No, Kimo.
Gravity is not a force.
Okay, so Kimo, I don't know why you're saying that, but that's not the case. So
what?
You should just stop saying.
You're not conceding.
That's not the case. Of course not.
But you still think it's a force?
It is a force. Mass accelerating is a force. A force is mass accelerating.
Hey.
What is gravity but mass accelerating?
But you're still the fight. You see Decodus. You see Decodus.
Emo, under Newtonian mechanics, anything accelerating is experiencing a force.
Decodus, you see what I'm saying? This is what I'm talking about.
This is what we've tried to explain to you forever, Kimo. I don't know how you still don't get this. You're gonna have to. You're gonna have to.
Problem here with physics.
I feel like he gets it. He just doesn't want to.
Of course,
keep getting it. He just wants to move past it.
Look, we all agree.
I don't want to move past
it. He's doing that technique where if you pretend it's not there, you don't have to address it.
We all agreed this morning you can treat it like a force. It doesn't mean it's a force. You can treat it like a force. Doesn't mean it's a force.
It's a force.
Well,
Beach thinks it's still a fundamental.
You can treat a force like a force, of course.
Beach, you still think it's a fundamental force. And we established this morning that it's not.
It is. Absolutely it is.
Well, this morning we had a different story, a different.
I don't know what you mean by this morning. That's not really interesting.
Physicists. We had experts here.
I don't know what you mean by that. But if you look at any modern physicist's text, if you look at any of their publications, you're gonna
wrong.
Just stop interrupting.
What, like you do after every sentence.
I'm not doing that, Kimo. You're doing it.
All right, children. Let Scott talk first, and then Kimo will talk second.
There are four fundamental. Fair enough. There are four fundamental forces, of which gravitation is one, and that's current science. That's modern science. That's a textbook or a paper or a book published today by physicists will say that.
No, you're wrong. Had two experts this morning.
Dr. Phil,
it's not a fundamental force.
Dr. Phil have asked you what are the fundamental forces in physics, and you have been obfuscated gravity.
I told you strong, weak, electric, and then this gravitational, but we understand it's not a force.
What?
It's electric.
Here you go again.
Electric is a force, I promise.
Electromagnetism. I just said electric stuff, just for short. But the point is, we went through this morning, and
there's an entirely difference between electric and electromagnetic.
And the gravitational one is not a force.
So I'm on the CERN webpage. This is 2021 CERN. There are four fundamental forces that work in the universe: the strong force, the weak force, the electromagnetic force, and the gravitational force.
And the gravitation.
The gravitational force is a fundamental force. So why are you saying that it's not?
It's not according to the physicists.
Well, then why are you interrupting? Why are you interrupting when I'm saying the point? So I'll say it again. As 2021 CERN website, there are four fundamental forces that work in the universe: the strong, the weak, the electromagnetic, and the gravitational force. That makes the gravitational force one of the four fundamental forces.
I've just said not anymore.
Yes, all the time.
I'm reading you the most current modern example we can find.
Well, we had real time, daytime, today. Physicists tell us
Dr. Phil have explained it to you. Dr. Phil have explained it to you because the resultant of the gravity it's a force. So applicable in physics is gonna be a force. But you can call it and he was explaining to you. You can call it whatever you want. But the resultant is going to be a force. It is a fundamental force, and he said it to you, and that's why he put it to you to say the four forces of the physics.
No, he didn't say that.
Yes, he said it. I have been here.
No,
I bet he did.
I said it 3 times, 2 or 3 times. I said it's not a fundamental force, is it? And they had to concede that it's not because it's not a force.
If you're talking about Phil Nye, the science guy, I guarantee you that he said it was a fundamental force because he's not an idiot and he knows.
We're talking about current astrophysics.
Yeah, I know. We're talking about current science. Yeah.
No,
that's why I was reading you. That's why I was reading you. Cutting edge science there is.
Current science. So Kimo doesn't know anything.
He keeps saying two of them, but he only has referred to Phil and then strawman what he said.
No, it's Phil and Paul. Paul and Phil.
Chemo, why the fuck are you interrupting me,
I didn't
bitch?
say one, it was two. Paul and Phil.
They both will say the same thing. They'll both say that fundamental forces include gravity.
Wrong.
You're just wrong, Kimo. I'm sorry.
Well, even Curve ran away because he knew I was going to drag him into it. So even he heard that it's not a force.
I don't think that's true. I think that you're either mistaken or
I know
right.
you don't think that's true because you're struggling to get your head around the
You're
fact
going to
that
go
it's
with
not
you
a
think
force.
he's mistaken?
Well,
you really are. Scott, yeah, or lying. The higher probability is Chemo is lying about what was said.
Well, that's fine. It just makes me understand that I understand more than what you understand.
I mean, look, Chemo, I don't know how long you think I don't know how good you think it is to last for like 2 minutes while we wait for them to get back where they say, "Oh no, Chemo, you're wrong." But that's exactly what will happen. You know it. I know it. Is there any source you've ever seen in your life that doesn't list gravity as a fundamental force?
You can think of it as a force, but it's not a fundamental force.
But if they list the 4 fundamental forces, here are the 4 fundamental forces. They list 4 of them. Gravity's always 1, right?
Yeah, this doesn't apply
Chemo's
any
list
pressure.
of fundamentals
So
different.
Because it doesn't
Okay.
apply pressure, it's not a fundamental force.
So you say that's the old science, not the new science. When do you think that changed?
What's
Yesterday?
changed?
Today? Well, there's 4 fundamental forces in the universe. Gravity is one of them. That's always been the case.
Yeah, that's
You
just
say
for
it's no
kids.
longer the case.
That's just for kids.
You say that's no longer the case. When did that change?
Yeah, that's for kids because the real gravity is too complicated for people like yourself to understand.
So
You
when they
think
say the
of it as
4
a force.
fundamental forces in the universe
We
include these
keep
4
it
things.
simple for people like you and say it's a force.
Emo, you gotta stop interrupting. So when they say the 4 fundamental forces in the universe include gravity, your position is what exactly?
Is that you can think of it as a force if you want. That's for children. The reality
They don't say that.
is that it's not a force.
That's not what they say there. They don't say you can think of it as a force. They say it is a force.
You think of it as a force, but it's not a force.
You can think of forces as forces, for sure.
No, you
can
have
think of
actual
cars as cars.
forces and
There's
apparent
4 fundamental
forces.
ones. And there are 4 fundamental forces. Gravity's 1.
Well, you can keep thinking that all you like. It's not a force.
I mean, it's just the truth, dude. Find me a
It's
source
in black
that says
and
otherwise.
white.
Not according to the current science. It's not a force.
It is. I just posted it for you.
Was
Tell you what, you find me a source.
Einstein
You find me a
then?
source that says it's not a fundamental force. Okay.
Yeah, I just said when they use the word force, it's them
Who's
thinking
they?
of it as a force.
Well, show me a citation that says that.
Chemo, do you
That's the
think
current
that
science that you can think of it as a
Emo,
force.
I just showed you this.
think-
You're wrong. I showed
do
you
you
current
think
science that
that
says
the
otherwise.
fact? So the
Goodness
fact
sakes,
is
if they're gonna
gravity.
use, when they put force, all it
Emo.
means is that okay, we're going to use it as if we think of it as a force.
You need to show me a citation that says this is true. Otherwise, you're just making stuff up.
Chemo, gravity
Right,
is a
hold on,
fictitious
Decodus.
force, and nothing about it being a
Decodus.
fictitious
Oh,
force
Jesus
makes it
Christ.
Where's
not a
Decodus?
fundamental force.
Dakotas, gravity, we can think of it as a force, right?
It's not Dakotas.
Well, 1 second, 1 second. Yeah, what's the problem?
We can think of gravity as a force,
4
right?
fundamental forces, Steve.
Yeah,
It's a fundamental force.
my friend. So, do you understand Einstein? That's the biggest question.
Can we think of gravity as a force?
We're
how-
talking about whether it's a 4 fundamental forces or not.
Yes.
They're saying,
Can
is
we
gravity
think
one of the 4
gravity-
fundamental forces?
Dakotas, why are you changing the story? Can we think
Yes,
of gravity as a force
it is
or not?
gravity, and I have a discussion with you. Gravity, it's a force.
Yeah, we can think of it as a force, right?
No, he didn't
No,
say that.
it
He
is-
said it
it-
is a
it
force.
is a
Listen,
force.
Chemo, I just posted it in the debate talks. This is again 2021. This is coming from modern cutting edge science. The 4 fundamental forces and their strengths. Gravitational force is one of the 4 fundamental forces. There's no avoiding this, Chemo. It's just wrong about this.
Well, like I said, you can think of it as a force. It's not a problem.
That's not what they're saying, though, is it? They're saying it's one of the 4 fundamental forces.
Yes, okay, again, because you can think of it as a
Come on,
force.
it's time you conceded. Finally, thank you.
If you can think of it as a force, you think of it as a force.
Yeah,
And it is actually a force, too, right?
I
No,
can
it's
think
not
of
actually
I
a
can think
force,
of pencil
because
as
it's
a
the
pencil,
bed of
chemo.
space-time.
So I can think of a force as a force. Congratulations.
course.
No, you can think of bending a space-time as a force.
That's not what they're saying, though,
I
is
can
it?
think of a force as a force.
No,
They're saying
it's
it's a
not
force.
an
like I
actual
can
Think
think
of
force.
a
fundamental
pencil.
forces.
How many force is this?
It's not an actual force, but you can think of it
Well,
as a force.
chemo,
That's not
the
what it
same
says,
way,
Chemo.
the same way as you can those so-called think of gravity as a force, the same way you can think of centrifugal force. as a force.
No, but that's
Right,
not
Gummy,
true.
Gummy,
That's not
Gummy.
true.
Right, tell him,
That is true.
tell him,
Fundamental
Gummy.
forces.
Stop
Four
trying
fundamental
to
forces.
help,
Gummy,
dude.
tell him we can think of gravity as a force, right?
Yes,
Because
you
it's
can
a
do that.
fundamental
But
force.
it is a fundamental force. You have to understand that.
Okay, because we're thinking of it as a force.
No, just because it's a fundamental force.
All right,
You're
because
treating it
that's
as a
where
force
we can
because in
think
this
of
model
it.
it is a force. How stupid are you?
Yeah, that's fine. We're thinking of it as a
You understand
force,
It's not like
in this
centrifugal
model,
force.
it's a
It's not like
force.
that at all.
but we know
your
in
model,
reality
it's
that
nothing, it's not
gravity is the
explained.
bending of space-time. Yes.
The whole point of fundamental forces is that they're unique and different. They cannot be broken down in any other way. So they are the atomic forces, the things that cannot be
Oh, it
separated.
can be broken
It's
down another
hold
way.
on, Chemo. It's deeply different than centrifugal force, which is not a fundamental force. Gravity is a fundamental force. It's one of the four fundamental forces. It's unique in that way.
Oh, you can break it down another way. We've got Einstein's equations that tells us it's not a force and it's the bending of space-time.
Well, those are just ways to describe what's going on.
Right, exactly. That
I
describes what's
don't
going
agree
on.
that it's different from centrifugal, but
Well, of
it's
course
fine.
it
You
is.
have your. You
Well,
can.
well,
I don't want
let
to
me ask you
divert
the
the
force.
conversation.
Well, no, but it's interesting. We can talk about that. But let me ask you a question. If it wasn't different from centrifugal, why do you think that it would not be listed as five fundamental forces? Gravity, centrifugal, weak,
Well,
and strong.
yeah, it is different in the sense that that gravity isn't actually, or sorry, I'm wording this weirdly. The fact that centrifugal is just a derivation of a fundamental force doesn't mean that it's different in the way that it's called a force. Because it only appears because of in like different well I'm sorry, my words aren't coming out.
I mean, the thing is, here's the deal: the label of fundamental force is something that's unique and specific, right? It means a very specific thing.
Well, okay, so the whole thing is the reason why centrifugal force happens is because of inertia, and because of a non-inertial frame of reference, or you being in a non-inertial frame of reference. Now, in a way, that doesn't actually go back to a fundamental force. In reality, it just is inertia. It's just,
Agree.
and so yeah, fine. You don't need to call it a fundamental force, but in the same way, gravity happens because of frame of references and inertia. The only difference is we've decided. Well, as far as we understand
What
it,
do you mean
using
maybe, V's? This is the current.
using
I can't believe
because
you
that's
sometimes.
because
Yeah, with
the way
current understanding.
because the way he said it, Timo, you don't
This
understand.
is
But
the
just
current
relax.
science that he's explaining.
No,
Oh,
it's
maybe.
not that it's not
Okay.
that he's not surviving current science. What I'm saying though is maybe is that he said it's caused by but another way to look at this is that it's a way of describing what's going on. Whether or not Einstein is getting at a true cause of gravity, that's not clear to me. Whether he's describing a way to look at it or think about it, that's clear. But is there a sense in which there's a physical truth to it? Some people say yes, some people say no. I mean, lots of people currently, well, not lots of people. There's definitely some physicists around today who say it's not a physical truth; it's more like a paradigm.
And so the problem here, so what Sarah just said in chat kind of underlies the problem is that to us, like gravity is a fundamental force, but that's because we exist within the system of space-time. If we were able to exist out of space-time, we could see it as simply being an apparent phenomena happening due to the bending of space-time.
Exactly.
So the same way that
Tommy.
centrifugal force is only happening inside the rotating object, so is gravity. The only reason we can call it fundamental is because we're inside that system. We can't peer outside.
This is not something. This is
Oh
not
my
something that we
God,
know.
I don't
to be
know why
true.
you're struggling against this, Veach. Physicists
Came
are
out.
saying
Just relax.
this.
Came out.
Why can't I respond?
Because he was talking to me.
All right, carry on. But again, you've got to.
Go ahead, Kimo. Go ahead. What do you want to say?
Again, I can't understand this resistance
Yep.
here. We've got physicists that tell you it's not
Yeah.
a force. We've got everyone here explaining it's not a force, and you're still resisting for some.
This is why you
reason.
should. This is why you should just be quiet, because all you're doing is trying to make it into some sort of political thing for you. Because what we're trying to do is actually have a real discussion here, and what I'm saying is actually, yes, really. And so what I'm saying is actually going to be real, and what you're saying is just silliness.
Well, go on then. Let's hear it is a force. Carry on.
All right, so thank you so much. Right. So a couple of things come to mind though. One is that when you say that it's only a force because we're in the paradigm and we're outside, that is not necessarily true. Like you're saying that as if that is a fact. There's no way to know that, right? Because we can't be outside this paradigm. Right? It can never be outside it. If Einstein is describing something that's physically true, then what you're saying would be true. But it's not clear that what he's doing is doing that. Like when you actually read the language that's used to say what Einstein did, it's going to be things like Einstein showed us a way to think about gravity, or Einstein showed us a way to discuss gravity, or Einstein has a paradigm with which we can model gravity. But these are different than saying this is a deep physical truth about the universe, right?
Well, yeah, but essentially, if we assume that he was correct in this, and that is essentially what we do when we talk about when we say in this paradigm, and then I say we're
That's
accepting the axiom of his model.
That's right.
And
That's
then
right. So
moving forward.
100%. So we can say in Einsteinian paradigm this would be true. In the Newtonian paradigm, we'd accept a different paradigm. Another thing would be true.
Yeah.
In the entropic gravity paradigm, a whole third thing. Because one thing we know for certain, right? We know this for certain. Newton does not tell us the whole story. Einstein does not tell us the whole story. We have yet to figure out what the actual full story is going to look like, right? We have these. We know this. We know that Einstein does a better job than Newton does overall, but we know that Einstein doesn't do a good enough job, right? We know we have problems, and so we're going to have some new theory eventually that's going to be a new paradigm, and maybe that will be actually base reality more. But for sure, if you're in the Einsteinian paradigm and you assume that Einstein is true, then we can say that phrase, it's not a force, because it's not a force in the Einsteinian paradigm. But there's nothing more true. Like if you're in the Newtonian paradigm in a context that is appropriate, then you can say it is a force in the Newtonian paradigm, because in that paradigm, it is a force.
I'm more like, I'm not saying that it's not a force, because it is 100% a force, no matter how you want to talk about it. And if you want to be very specific about it, you can call it an inertial force, you can call it a fictitious force. If you want to play word games and say that because it's a fictitious force, it's not real or whatever, but it is still a force. What I'm arguing is that the only reason why we call it a fundamental force, even under Einstein's paradigm, is because it's fundamental to our very existence.
Well,
because we cannot be.
No, but I thought the reason we call it a fundamental force in all paradigms is because there's no other way to think about what it's doing. You can't build gravity out of the other three forces, basically.
Well, yeah, but at the same
time,
you can't necessarily build centrifugal force out of the other forces. It's something inherent to.
I think you can build centrifugal out of the others.
So
How
by
would
nature,
you do that? Could you try and explain this?
Or by nature, the centrifugal force is gonna come with a weight, my friend. By nature.
No.
Yes.
Or what do you mean by weight?
So, two different objects, they're gonna be in a certain distance. If they are gonna approaching to each other, they're gonna start to spin.
I'm not sure what your point is there.
Calculus.
Like what I mean is that the centrifugal force is just inherent, or not inherent. It just what's the word? Like it appears simply due to like non-inertial frames of reference. It doesn't appear due to a force or a fundamental force. You can say that the fundamental force is what's making the non-inertial frame of reference even happen in the first place. But the centrifugal force isn't an effect.
But can't we say that centrifugal forces, as all kinetic forces, are built out of electromagnetic force?
If you want to,
I mean, you
can kind of defend it that. But the whole thing is, what I'm saying is, it doesn't matter what force is creating the non-inertial frame of reference. The mere existence of the non-inertial frame of reference can make centrifugal force happen. So it's like when I say centrifugal force, can you tell me whether that is the? Can you tell me whether that is because of electromagnetism,
yes.
or can you tell me whether that's due to
without
gravity?
electromagnetism? Without electromagnetism, you can't have the centrifugal force.
But what about gravity?
Gravity is separate. You can have gravity without electromagnetism. In fact,
can you not have centrifugal force due to gravity?
Without electromagnetism?
Yeah.
Maybe you could, but that still makes it not a fundamental force.
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying is you can't really pinpoint what is making it happen. You
That's
can only
okay.
pinpoint what starts the process.
But what I guess the idea behind the fundamental forces is that it's that they are atomic, so that like you cannot build the one out of the others, right? But we know that centrifugal, whatever it might look like, maybe there's multiple ways to build it even, but we know that it can be built out of the others, right? You can combine the others in ways, and then you'll end up with centrifugal, like the same way that you'll end up with a kinetic. If we push on something, that's a version of the electromagnetic force. So we can build these other forces and give them names and talk about them. And they are actually really, though, combinations of these four fundamentals. But the four fundamentals aren't built out of each other.
Well, let's just use this as an example. Okay, why does the Earth spin right now? Well, it's conservation of angular momentum, right?
Mm.
It's not a force making it spin right now. It's just conserving its angular momentum. Yeah. And yet we do experience. I know flat earthers would disagree with this, but I'm sure you agree with me.
Yes, Chris, we can hear you for goodness sakes. Don't say Veach are getting annihilated right now. Carry on, Gummy.
I'm sure you would agree that even though Earth is spinning right now, or while Earth is spinning right now, you would also agree with me that centrifugal force is happening.
Sure, but it's built out of the fundamental forces.
There's no force. But what? Okay, so what force is making that happen? Because
we talked about it. We talked about it. So
it was fundamental.
Like
9 times.
So conservation of angular momentum isn't a force.
I know. So that's not a force. Here's the deal. Here's the deal. We have 4 fundamental forces you can't break down anymore, okay? So you cannot build gravity out of the other 3, you cannot build electromagnetic out of the other 3, and so on, okay? Now, any other force we identify, okay? Centrifugal, some sort of kinetic force, every other force that we can describe. Every other force we can describe. Hold on, just let me finish. Let me just finish. Every other force we can define is going to be able to be built, whether or not we can decide what it's going to look like, or whether or not even there might be multiple ways to talk about it. It's going to be a combination of these 4 fundamental forces. Now, if it's not these 4 fundamental forces, then it would be a fundamental force.
But what I'm actually questioning you on is whether the centrifugal force can be included there. That is what I'm actually debating it, and I'm asking by what mechanism. So on Earth,
electromagnetism.
No. Okay, so listen to my full thing, which is Earth isn't spinning due to electromagnetism; it is spinning due to conservation of angular momentum.
Yes, so that's not a force.
Yes. Yeah, fine, exactly. And yet you will experience centrifugal force on the surface.
Yes, but only because electromagnetism is a thing.
Yeah, but where does that come into play?
Because, think about this. How would you have centrifugal force if there wasn't atoms like pulling each other, connecting each other? You can't have these kinetic forces without electromagnetism. They are examples. Go ahead.
So sure, you can say that electromagnetism is keeping your body together to actually have a centrifugal force,
right?
But that's not the centrifugal force itself. That's just your body
but
holding
it shows you.
Come on, you gotta let him get to the end of his point. I'm not gonna moderate this, Veach. This is not very fair. Veach,
just hush.
No, he's gotta be moderated. You're not letting him finish his point.
Just stop, Chemo. You're just
stop. What moderating? You've got to let him finish his point, Veach. It's not fair because you're a mod. He's over talking.
He finishes his points. I have to ask to get my points finished too. Okay?
Yeah, but you got to let him get to the end of his point before you just jump in and then just start talking.
Chemo, you're not helping. I promise.
I'm moderating it. Can you please let him finish?
Chemo, we are understanding each other. Just stay out of it. You don't understand. I promise.
I don't understand anything.
Crying, Chemo. Jesus Christ.
Just spice it up for you, Verbal.
Well, can I add one last thing?
Okay, all right. So I think you are missing the point.
Yeah, well, no. So the thing is, if you want to do it that way, well, then I would say that gravity is reliant on electromagnetism because you wouldn't experience gravity unless your atoms held themselves together by electromagnetism.
That's not true. That's not true because then one atom and another atom have gravity between them.
Oh, are you saying that your body's held together by gravity?
No, I'm saying that atoms have gravity between them, though. That's a fact, right?
And they can also have electromagnetism between them.
That's right. But they do have gravity between them, right? The thing that we call gravity exists, and that thing is between 2 atoms. It is not something that is built, requires, or if we eliminated electromagnetism, we would still have gravity in the universe. Now, it would be a different universe. We wouldn't be alive, but
if we eliminate electromagnetism, we could still have centrifugal centrifugal force.
I don't. How's that true?
Because okay, so let's instead of talking a body where let's just talk about a singular atom. Do you not believe that a singular atom can experience centrifugal force?
I guess I don't. Or I guess I'm not sure exactly how that would look.
Well, the whole thing is like centrifugal force is simply because of the fact that you're in a non-inertial frame of reference. So if you put an atom, a singular atom, on a rotating sphere, well, what the centrifugal force simply is that the sphere will keep spinning, but unless you have a force pulling you in to keep you spinning with it, you'll actually fly away from it. But
if we have a sphere, where look, think about it like this, okay? In every version that you're going to come up with a centrifugal force, you're going to have the existence of gravity as part and parcel of this working, or electromagnetism, or both.
No,
okay?
all I need is for something to be a non-inertial frame of reference, something to be rotating like the Earth, and that's happening due to conservation of angular momentum.
But how do you have the Earth if you don't have electromagnetic force or gravity force?
Yes.
Well, like for this thought experiment, we have to assume that the Earth doesn't need that to hold itself together.
Well, okay, that thought experiment then makes that thought experiment right there, that conditional makes centrifugal a fundamental force then, because you just eliminated the way it's built.
But at the same time, like this argument doesn't hold up if you use it for gravity, because gravity couldn't really happen in the same way if electromagnetism. No, because if electromagnetism wasn't a thing, then the atoms wouldn't hold up to build enough masses to actually have a significant gravitational pull.
But they would have some gravitational pull, though, right? That's the key here: is that if there would be gravity, it would exist. The nature of gravity exists without electromagnetism.
But it wouldn't be enough to create anything. It would all just be atoms.
That's okay. The rule isn't that it has to be enough to create the world or something. It doesn't. That's not the rule. The rule is that is inherent to the property of the force. It doesn't need electromagnetism in order to exist. We conceived of this force. We talk about this force, and it does not need electromagnetism as its base unit. You know what I mean? This is why I'm giving you my understanding of why these things are called fundamental. And by the way, I'm not a physicist either, so I may be making some mistakes.
No.
But I think what I'm saying makes a lot of sense, which is that,
I get what you're saying.
If they're atomic, they can't be split up, and it makes sense to me that gravity is considered atomic, because it doesn't really, even if it's not very useful in that case without electromagnetism, it isn't. It could exist, and it does exist based on the way we conceive of it.
So I don't know how to describe it, but the way I feel like that this argument is going is that it's more like, instead of talking about actual centrifugal, it's like, oh, but if we didn't have electromagnetism or gravity, it couldn't happen to begin with. But that's just because then universe wouldn't exist as we see it.
No, that isn't that way though, because the centrifugal force, the force that you get, this fictitious force that we get, there's a sense in which it is built out of the existence of these other forces. Because if those other forces aren't present, there is no way to get the centrifugal force. It never exists on its own a priori, intrinsically, right? The centrifugal force doesn't just manifest the way gravity.
But at the same time, if we remove all the other fundamental forces, can you have gravity?
Yes, because gravity is conceived.
Okay, so
we talk about gravity as a thing that is inherent between mass.
So what would gravity be between?
Mass.
Okay, how would you have mass without the strong force and the weak force holding atoms together?
We would take whatever is the most atomic unit we have of mass, and that would be the mass that has gravity.
And do you not believe that if the weak force and the strong force existed, then atoms and mass wouldn't exist?
Okay,
because that's what I believe. Is that you wouldn't even have the property.
I believe that atoms would exist, but would mass not exist though?
Yeah, because the way I understand mass is that mass, or inertial mass, if you want to be super specific about it, happens mainly due to the energy contained when you hold the quarks together within the neutrons and protons and electrons. So if you didn't have the quarks, the binding energy of the quarks seems to make up like 90 or something. I don't remember the exact number. I'm sorry, but a big majority of the mass of something, the inertial mass of something, it seems to be because of the energy holding quarks together. And so if that wasn't holding them together, I don't see how mass would be a thing. So I feel like this kind of also gets a bit metaphysical
wonder-
and going into
why
space
you
where we
have
don't.
why you have
I
to
wonder
take
if
out the
that's true.
strong force and weak force? I don't get it. In your thought experiment, why you have to take out everything just to prove the gravity? Because it's the dumbest thing to do. Because the gravity it's applied to mass. Yeah.
Well,
So-
that's what I'm saying is that just because the situation of inertial centrifugal force can't happen without the other forces doesn't make it less of a discussion to have. The same way
Well,
that
it's not that it's less of a discussion. It's just that it's not what we call a fundamental force.
yeah, but the thing that I feel like you're not or we're not connecting on is that when I say that it can't really be like made into one of the other fundamental forces, is that it can't really in the sense that you want it to be. You're kind of just saying, yeah, but without electromagnetism and gravity, you couldn't have the situation where it appears, which is true. But at the same time, I would say the same.
That's not
Because
what I'm saying.
I believe it. Is it not?
No,
can
I've
you-
said I tried to say this before too. It's not that it's just that then we wouldn't have a universe, and that's why we wouldn't have that force. It's that force is actually the force that we call centrifugal force. That force, the energy associated with that force, that is a result of a combination of the force that is electromagnetic and gravity.
But
And
what I
strong
would
en-
say then, okay, so if we go back to my example, tell me what was the wrong part. So the example was, if you want to, we can do the singular atom, but let's just say a person standing on Earth. Earth is spinning due to conservation of angular momentum. He will experience centrifugal force. That is what my statement. Now,
Right.
to me, there is no electromagnetism necessary to make the to make the centrifugal force actually happen. Same with
But how do you-
gravity.
But in order to have that situation, you have these bodies that are
Yes.
existing, and they are rotating. In order for all that to be happening, this rotating is the rotation action, right? That action is taking the electromagnetic force and it's reworking it in a way.
Well, yeah,
Okay.
you're using the electromagnetic force and gravity to keep the planet together and your body together, but that's not what's actually making the centrifugal force happen.
But it is though in a way. I guess that's where we're disagreeing. I mean,
But
it is
that's
in a way
where
because
I don't see by what way, because you say in a way, but I can't really see by what measure is it interacting. Like what electromagnetic interactions are happening to make you feel the centrifugal force?
because the centrifugal force requires this rotation action that we have. This rotation action is inherently, by its very nature, requires this connectivity. Because you can't have the sphere rotating right without a connection.
Yeah, but to me, I'm making your own argument, or I'm using your own argument against you when I say, yeah, but without strong and weak force, you couldn't have mass, and therefore gravity wouldn't exist.
I don't think that's true though. I don't
feel like
agree with
that's
that
a very similar.
I don't think that's true though, Guy. I think I heard you say
It's
that.
not similar. It's not similar at all to take out strong force and weak force, because the strong force and weak force is the fundamental compartment of the matter. So without the matter, nothing is gonna exist. Yes, it's true.
Exactly, but that's the argument is that okay, but essentially what you're saying against me is that okay, but without electromagnetism and gravity, planets wouldn't exist. And I'm doing the same. Yeah, without weak force and strong force, atoms and mass wouldn't exist. I feel like I know you don't agree with me, but I feel like that's a very
matter is
same
not
thing.
gonna exist. So matter,
Yeah, you can.
the existence of matter.
Matter doesn't exist. To me,
But
that's
remember-
the same kind of argument as you saying
No,
planets
no,
wouldn't exist without electromagnetism.
turn that statement around. Your mass doesn't exist. Ooh.
But the problem though is that when you have centrifugal force, that there's a sense in which that rotation that's happening, that rotation, the reason there's any force associated with that is because the electromagnetic force is essentially being redirected via this rotation. If there wasn't, it's not. I don't think it's as simple as saying that you wouldn't have an object to do it. I think it's more like saying if that force isn't in there somewhere, then you can't get a centrifugal force out of that action.
Well, essentially, what you're saying is so let me simplify the whole situation in how it's going in my mind. So to me, in order to get centrifugal force, you need a non-inertial frame of reference. Your argument is because you can only get a non-inertial frame of reference using gravity or electromagnetism, That is what you're essentially implying.
Sort of. I mean,
So
that's not how I would phrase it.
Because the only way to actually get the situation where it happens, you need electromagnetism. That's why it's fundamentally electromagnetism.
Well, and I would add to that also that that electromagnetism does not in any way like this rely on the existence of these other forces. So it goes in both directions, where the way in which we've conceived and talk about electromagnetism and the other three fundamental forces is intrinsic. Their existence and their nature is intrinsic to them. They exist independent, or, irrespective of these other forces.
So,
But these,
Scott, are you saying that you consider the forces that have no apparent parent force, like the centrifugal force, you're saying is like a child of these other forces? They're required to be there for it to exist, whereas the others seem to fundamentally exist without something else is requiring them.
yeah. And by the way, I'm not saying it like for me. I'm just saying this is my understanding of what what it is that is defined as a fundamental force.
I make sure I was following you. That's all.
I have a thing here, by the way, that talks about, it's actually interesting. It actually talks about why it is that centrifugal force is not fundamental.
Yeah.
So
if you have that link, I'd love to have it. But because essentially the big part that I fall flat on is that sure you need that for the actual situation that the non-inertial frame reference to start happening. But once it's happening, you don't need it anymore for the centrifugal force to happen, because there's no actual interaction, electromagnetic or otherwise, between the object experiencing the centrifugal acceleration and the object that's actually in a non-inertial frame of reference. Like there's nothing. It's simply their positions relative to each other and the way it's changing that makes it appear to be that way.
Well, no, but that's not true though. Like for example, you're talking about the case in which a person is on a planet that's rotating.
Well, any situation where you get centrifugal.
Well, because like for example, that centrifugal force that a person's experiencing, right? That's going to be electromagnetic, but it's also going to be gravity force, right? It's only because the person is on the surface of that sphere and rotating around with that sphere that we're getting any kind of force. Like if the sphere is rotating and there's not any gravity force between them and there's no electromagnetism.
So I don't know if I cut out or you're cut out.
Oh, sorry.
So you said if there's no electromagnetism or gravity between them, and then you stop.
Yeah, if there's no electromagnetism or gravity between them, then nothing's happening to that person.
Well, the thing is that there is, but that's not important for centrifugal acceleration to happen, because centrifugal acceleration isn't just like. It isn't an interaction between the two. It's simply an apparent thing that happens when the one thing is essentially accelerating away from the other thing.
Well, in order to experience the centrifugal force, right? The object, the person, has to be rotating with the sphere. It has to be moving around in that circle, and that's the fictitious force arises out of that interaction, and that is an interaction because the person can't be doing that with the sphere rotating. It can't be actually taking that ride if not for the existence of forces between the two things, like gravity. By the way, I posted that article that talks about why it's not a fundamental force. It's basically saying what we've been saying. It doesn't seem to offer really any new insight, but it's basically saying it addresses what you're saying a little bit and says what I'm saying a little bit, and just sort of says it's confusing and it's a little bit of semantics, but it's in there.
Yeah, the way you're describing it seems very similar to the distinction that's made for like the logical absolutes.
Maybe. I mean, all I'm trying to do is say my understanding of what physicists mean, what the definition of a fundamental force is. So I'm trying to explore. Gummy is pushing on this definition, and we're trying to explore. Do these definitions make sense? Are these reasonable things? And is it true that these four fundamental forces are unique in some significant way? And we're trying to explore that space a little bit. I think they are, but I do think it's not obviously easy to see. But I still lean towards they are personally.
It makes sense, like the way you're describing it. I don't know if that's correct or not, but I mean it doesn't seem to be an absurd way.
Well, I agree honestly, I think at the end of the day, it more comes down to a semantical argument than a real, because we both agree on what's happening and all of this. So the whole thing is that, yeah, you can. So in inertial, or not, I keep saying inertial. I'm sorry. The centrifugal force does only happen if you have either or some other force, so like electromagnetism or gravity, or gravitational force. It's not. It doesn't just happen on its own without one of those two. That's essentially your argument.
Yeah, these things,
And
it can only arise out of the interactions of these pre-existing forces.
And to me, what I'm saying is, sure, they are the like the medium, so to speak, in a very loose way, because I can't think of another word. The medium you go with to have this happen, but the thing that's actually just making this happen is inertial frames of reference and just acceleration.
But inertial frames. So when you say inertial frames of reference,
Non-inertial frame of reference. Sorry.
I mean, those aren't forces.
Exactly, but that's what I mean.
So they aren't the thing though that really makes it happen. Really.
Can I make a short analogy? So you have two rocks in space, small, yeah, and because of the gravity, they are gonna start to get to each other, to be closer one to another, and they're gonna have a near miss, yeah. The smaller object is gonna start to spin in the direction of the other object that it have been attracted. So here you go. You have starting the rotation of something. So you need for big objects you need only gravity to have a circular motion.
We both agree on that, and all I'm saying is, yes, you need one of gravity or electromagnetism to create that circular motion, but the actual interaction that makes the follow up to that isn't that. It's just the fact that the situation of circular motion has happened. I'm not sure if I worded myself correctly there. Like, so the circular motion can happen due to either electromagnetism or gravity or whatever you want to use for it. But it's once that circular motion has arisen, now you get centrifugal acceleration.
Yes.
I'm gonna read you a sentence and tell me if you think. Tell me how you think this applies to centrifugal.
Yeah.
Okay. The four fundamental forces. Despite the apparent complexity within the universe, there remain just four basic forces. These forces are responsible. This is what I'm going to get to. These forces are responsible for all interactions known to science, from the very small to the very large. To those that we experience in our day-to-day lives, these forces describe the movements of galaxies, chemical reactions, structure of atomic nuclei, cause of radioactive decay. They describe the true cause behind familiar terms like friction, the normal force, and centrifugal force. These four basic forces are known as fundamental because they alone are responsible for all observation of forces in nature. The four fundamental forces of gravity, electromagnetism, weak and strong. Now, so given that sentence, do you have, given the way they phrased it, do you have the same instinct to argue against their phraseology as against mine? Because it may be a matter that I'm just not articulating it well enough.
Well, yeah, because, like, okay, so, like, it's probably the same from my side, is that I might not be articulating what my thoughts are either as well, because, so, okay, let's have another example then, just to say. So we're sitting in a car, and the car is turning. Now, you feel like you're being pushed into the window, because the car is turning left, and you feel like you're being pushed into the window on the right side. So that's you experiencing centrifugal force. Now, what is actually making, like, the atoms on your left side push on the atoms on your right side? What interaction is making that happen? Of course, the interaction between the atoms is electromagnetism, but what I mean is, what is creating the motion for those atoms to start pushing on each other?
You know what I think? I think what you just described is another way to get at it, maybe, because can we not say this? if we wanted to, if we were going to write a simulation, let's say we're going to write a simulation of the universe, right? Of all the interactions and things, we could, the thing you just described, we could choose to model that 100% at the level of the electromagnetic forces and gravity. That's the, if we wanted to just do it at that level, we could get all the right macro behaviors out of that. Do you agree?
Yeah.
So that's the sense in which it's built out of those forces, because we don't need anything except for electromagnetism and gravity, and then if we model those at the base level correctly, the centrifugal force pops out, emerges naturally out of the macro objects. But that's not true for gravity. We can't do anything with we can't make gravity pop out in an inherent way like that. That's the difference.
You're talking nonsense. Here it says 2009 hypothesis about gravity earned him a comparison to Einstein.
There was given this is, I think, to me suddenly this is a very clean way to think about it. If you can simulate it using the electromagnetism force and the gravity force, if we can do that perfectly, we feel like centrifugal force will pop out of it magically. It'll just emerge.
Well, okay, so
and that's what makes it not fundamental.
Yeah.
Well, look, I mean, let me just hold on a second, Gormy.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hold on. We've got this physicist here, who says 2009 hypothesis about gravity earned him a comparison to Einstein for his complete rethinking of what gravity could be. And he proposed that gravity was not a fundamental force reach. So again, the physicists disagree. Gormy disagrees. The current science says it's not a fundamental force, yet you still...
Are you talking about Verlinde?
But he's...
There we go.
Chemo.
Yeah, Verlinde's the guy I was referencing earlier when I said to you that Einstein... So we have Newton. We know Newton doesn't work. We have Einstein. We know Einstein doesn't work. We have a third guy was Verlinde. I just didn't name him. Who has an alternative idea. Maybe that's going to be the one that works. But all of these guys are having competing ideas about how this works, but they're all just different paradigms, right? Because none of them have the actual answer. So, yes, Verlinde's entropic gravity. That's the entropic gravity guy. So, I mean, he completely reconceives Einstein too. So he has a whole different view on it.
Yeah, and it seems to me like if you discovered some other forces that comprise together to make gravity, and it turns out to be an emergent force of something else, then you could maybe no longer consider it fundamental. But you would have to demonstrate those other forces. So until otherwise, it seems fundamental to me.
And I know this. I know that Feynman at one point said, "I have a sneaking suspicion that gravity is not fundamental." But one day that we'll figure out that gravity is not a fundamental force. Whether he's right or wrong, I don't know. But I remember he said that at one point.
Well, that's the current science.
Yeah. The biggest problem, Kimo, the biggest problem is because what we observe right now, regarding whatever you have there by that guy, what we observe in the universe right now, without the gravity, we cannot put the things in motion. So whatever this guy is gonna say, he have to explain everything in the detail that Einstein have explained it. So he's not even closer to that explanation.
I think whichever way you slice it, gravity is certainly more fundamental than the centrifugal force.
Oh,
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so here's what I would say that I feel like centrifugal force isn't dependent on the electromagnetic or gravitational in the same sense that some other things are. Essentially, it's just an emergent property from acceleration and movement. It's essentially an emergent thing that happens from when you have acceleration and movement. So however you want to create that acceleration and movement, whether that's by electromagnetism, gravitation, it happens due to how that works.
And in a word you have going straight to weight, yeah. In a word, doesn't matter how you're gonna switch it or put it, Einstein, Newton, or what, you're gonna be exactly in the position of saying, because weight is gonna have affecting everything.
Yeah, but at the same time, the same way that we call gravity a fundamental force, like you can also go to the level of, like, is that just an emergent thing, or is it the force itself? Because from how I understand it, it seems to be more of an emergent thing, like centrifugal forces. We just
How does
don't know the actual fundamental thing that makes it happen.
How does something fall without being lifted up?
Well, it could turn out to be the case, but then I think that would make it not, by definition, not a fundamental force anymore. If it turns out we figure out a way that happens.
Exactly.
I
That's
think,
why I mean, yeah.
and I think that well, I think I think we're basically agreeing at this point. I think when you say that about it is a force that arrives out of acceleration, you can say it that way. But what you do there when you do that is you make, it's almost like you're making acceleration the fundamental force or a fundamental unit.
Because force equals acceleration in a very pretty much, and that's why. And
so when you sort of if you make that an atomic thing that can't be broken down, it suddenly becomes a fundamental force in a way. But I guess the key to it all, I think the cleanest thing for me, and this last thing I'll say on it, I guess, is that if we were gonna any way we were gonna simulate it, if we were gonna sit down and simulate it, we could simulate your on the level of acceleration and all that stuff. We could do it that way, but if we were gonna break it down further, we would be stuck breaking it down to electromagnetism and gravity, and we would not be able to break those down any further. We don't have any way to make those combine or something, and those are the only forces we would have to put. If we were going to go all the way down as far as we know everything, the only forces we would have to explicitly code are going to be gravity and electromagnetism in this case, in the motion case. And the fact that we have to explicitly code them makes them fundamental, and the fact that they're the only ones makes the other ones not fundamental, is the way I think is. I think that's correct.
Yeah, and so the one thing I would say though is that the way I see it is that gravity would only be emergent because the actual force would be what's making mass bend space-time. To me, that interaction would be the force, and then gravity would be the emergent property of that.
So it's sort of like calling the force between the mass and the space-time, whatever that interaction is, give it a different name, basically, and then we can call that up.
Yeah, that would be that would be the main thing that would change.
How does Einstein conceive, when Einstein says the word gravity? Is that what he's referring to? That interaction?
I'm actually not sure.
Maybe he might actually be doing that.
According. Oh yeah. Carry on.
According to Einstein, the gravitational attraction of the two objects, due to the bending of his space-time as he proposed it, was the mutual attraction.
Yeah.
So not the bending part, but the what happens to the object after the bending.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so you're right. I mean, we could sort of think of it. It's possible that we could just come up with a way to talk about the interaction between those the bending and the objects, and then say that's the fundamental force of which gravity is an emergent property or something.
So Kimo.
Yes. So just super quick. So in the same way that the fundamental forces like electromagnetism or gravity is what starts the acceleration then leads to centrifugal. And in the same way, mass bending space-time, that is the thing that leads to gravity.
That seems intuitive. That seems like obviously that's not the way that's not the way science has done it. But given my layperson understanding, it seems like maybe they could have done it that way, and it would have still all worked out the same. It seems possible.
And I'm not sure whether this is just because of the way and I'm not even gonna say laymen, but rather non-experts talk about it or not. Because for example, I've never heard someone who's on the very, very high
level
activity talk to another person who's very informed on it and see what kind of
how they debate it. Yeah.
vernacular they use to name different things. Because that's the main thing is
It would be interesting. I always wish that we could find real physicists having actual real discussions about fundamentals that they disagree about. It'd be so fascinating to see how they fight that stuff out.
So Kimo, what's wrong right now with the gravity?
It's not a force, is what we need to establish.
Very good, Kimo. Stay with your narrative.